One of the nice things about Jack Nicholson, I think, is the variations of experience that he seems to represent. Not necessarily on film. I mean, on film, what he's done is obvious. But we were just talking before the break about optimism, and how you were telling me that you were sometimes a difficult person to stimulate in terms of being optimistic or alive.
Slow to inspire, or need inspiration more than the average person, I think.
How does that affect you as an artist? I mean, doesn't an artist have to be constantly inspired and turned on,
No, not constantly, I don't think. I mean, at least I'm not, A certain amount of it is inspiration, and a certain amount of it is, like any other job, it's the craft of the job.
Mm-hmm.
The inspiration is, comes from outside. I mean, you couldn't live on things coming from outside all the time.
In a way, don't you believe that everything, is self-emanating, that it all comes from yourself?
Self-emanating?
Self-emanating. Or don't you believe that?
Well, I think that everything passes through a self, that it's like a relay station of information, the self. But, I mean, I think it's like being passed and communicated back and forth between the audience, which is really producing the environment which the artist, or whatever you call them, is drawing on. And
that's an interesting phrase. You say it's a relay station of information, which is to apply the...
It's shaped by yourself. That's what gives it configuration. But basically, you're drawing on the same total reality that everyone else is. You take it in and you send it out again in a different form. That's the way I've always viewed it anyway. It may not be right, it's not like a religious belief or anything like that, but as I'm working, very often it's how I get past negative things. I accept it into me when it comes to me through the work and assume about it, but when I'm working, that's the way I think about it. Oh, this is a certain kind of thing. I've encountered this before while working, this bad feeling. I think I'll just go with it in the work. Let it be the work, Do
you make a distinction between your work and your life, your activities? Is your work an extension of yourself, or is it divorced from yourself, consciously?
Well, I try and make certain divorcements of my work from me, because of the particular profession or work that I do. Everything about it is against that. So from within, I try and keep some balance. In other words, the average person who views a film assumes much of what you represent as you, and of course it is. Mm-hmm. But I'm just talking about dealing with the tendency to make you into that. That's all of you.
I see.
And then so just inwardly, I lean the other way against it, because I recognize it to be a very big external symptom of the kind of life I'm living.
Most of the people, no doubt, listening to us right now, this is KBBC in Pasadena.
That's nice.
Know you as the guy in Easy Rider, of course, and the guy in 5 Easy Pieces. How divorced from you, Jack Nicholson, the person, are you from those two characters? I know that the characters are, of course, different from each other, but how much of you do we know from watching those two films?
Well, one of the things that I cite in any character, this is just a simple acting thing, it's a learned thing, I learned it in an acting class, is what's the tragic flaw of a character. In other words, most plays are written around, a lot of plays and, that kind of literature are written around this concept. And in a character, you have the option of objectivity, and you can view it and see the tragic flaw of the character. And it's one of the things that I most focus in on articulating, by implication or explicitly. You don't have that objectivity about yourself. Do you know what I mean? In other words, I feel like one generation over the character, even though I try and fill it up with myself from moment to moment, the feeling aspect of a human being. I have taken, sort of a license of objectivity. Oh, this is what makes this character move toward a tragic ending, if it's a tragic, if it's that kind of thing.
So in essence, you have the degree of control over the characters that you play.
Right. Sure.
And you don't feel that you have that over.
I don't. I don't think so.
What's happening with? I told you I didn't want to talk about films and all
that's
of that.
okay.
But I am curious.
Yeah.
You are, of course, part of a vanguard of a whole new trip in filmmaking. Obviously, and there are a lot of people, no doubt, listening to us who are really desperately and passionately involving themselves in that kind of medium. Would like to take cameras and paint with them as they would use brushes. Is it all going to be available to them since now Easy Rider and all the others, or is it just a temporary trend, and are we all going to really be going back to the control of the big studios and their kind of motion picture?
I don't really know about it. I mean, in other words, I don't have a yes or a no opinion on that. I think that as long as there is an organized big distribution outlet, you will have a product which relates specifically to those outlets, related to the amount of activity in terms of artists making films. I think they already have an awful lot of the really necessary equipment already available to them. It's a question of their audience developing, really, so that their product gets out in a similar way to another kind of product. And then once that phase has been gone through, which will seem like a very sharp demarcation of this kind of film as opposed to that kind of film, the separation will disappear then very quickly. Do you know what I mean? In other words, immediately in any art form, when someone sees something else that's working for another artist, it affects their work. I don't mean they necessarily take it for themselves, but they're influenced by it. They've seen something, and those kind of. I like that movies are still sort of group versions of individual efforts.
Group versions of individual efforts.
Yeah, right.
That's an interesting phrase.
Well, it's like if if you were doing, a big, huge chapel or something as a painter, one guy doesn't get up and paint everything, It's
Right.
it's a group. Well, that's what a movie's more like that in painting, a lot of people, and it really is that way. There's just, it's the cliche.
I really loved Five Easy Pieces. I really loved that
Yeah.
motion picture.
I'm quite fond of it myself.
It was such an extraordinarily personal experience. I don't know if it's just a young man's experience, really. I don't know if it's just a question of young men relating to you, especially that long trek home to see your dad. Remember?
Yeah.
It's just.
Yeah. I thought the movie was really beautifully written, and done, and the woman who wrote it, Adrienne Joyce Carol Eastman. No, we're very old friends, and I think she's really a fantastic writer, and it's just more enjoyable to play something that's not hard work to play. I mean, in other words, if the writing has a basic quality all its own, there's an enormous amount of pressure off the performer, which obviously almost immediately makes his work better. What I mean? The fact that he has less obstacles, and she and I are very close in an awful lot of ways, and as is Bob Rafelson, who worked on the story and the script with her, and then directed the film from there. I have old relationships with both people.
So it is kind of an intimate family experience.
That was a sort of very much an intimate family-like experience, but it's essentially, interestingly enough, I feel an anti-family movie.
What do you mean it's not a family film?
Much of what is limiting almost every character in the film, and that all of the characters either are members of this family or are relating to it in family intentions, are all having their lives limited by that experience, by having had the specific experience of their family. and the fact that they can overcome that, or don't overcome it, is a negative statement about the effects of family living at this time on many people.
How is it for you? I don't mean personally, but your personal point of view as to the nature of the family unit and traditional family life as opposed to communal life or making it on your own.
Well, right now I'm a singular person, primarily. I have very erratic family experience myself, but I mean experience that even sounds more erratic than it is, but it's typical of a lot of people that I know anyway, in that my mother and father were separated just prior to my birth. My sister, who's died since her family broke up. I have one of her children, a nephew, who has a broken marriage. I have another niece who is in her second marriage. In other words, it's the predominance of experience now. I've assumed probably that's because it's the nature of what my family experience has been like, so I emulate it. But now I'm just I'm observing the singular experience, the non-family experience as a person at this moment in my life.
How are you responding to it?
It has the obvious freedoms about it. I find myself falling into minor variations of family experience just by the nature of the society that I relate to. In other words, friends, girlfriends, all of that sort of thing, because it's constantly there. And at times I get very sad behind it, if you want to know the truth, when I think about it, because it does seem like an inevitable thing. Do you know what I mean? It has culturally always been true and always been dominant, and it seems like most of our values are really heavily hooked into perpetuating that style. I'm sad if I take the strongest position against it that I feel within me, which is it's economically backbreaking. It causes a lot of illusion. It gives people enormous emotional problems to deal with, long into their younger adult life and maybe forever. All of these things, they all have corresponding things. It also gives you shelter. It also gives you feelings of comfort. But maybe these kinds of feelings of comfort aren't the best thing for advanced society living, living of the future, the kinds of movement that, it would be very hard, for instance, to take a 20,000-year trip if you had the same feeling about family that someone had in 1920, that you were going to leave 13 daughters, 8 sons, a mother, a father, and all of them living in your pad for 20,000 years, all at one shot. You weren't going to die. You were just going to go away forever. You couldn't, that emotional inner imprint wouldn't make it in that kind of a society.
So is the single state the inevitable fruition of all of this?
Well,
is it a question of all of us resulting in being alone, Jack? I mean, is that really where it is?
I honestly don't know. I'm just wrapping out this side of it for I'm just fine. It's a very big governor and a very big element of everyone's living, and there are going to have to be enormous changes in some areas. This is one where if you change it, for instance, as relates to overpopulation, start rewarding people for staying single instead of getting married and having children, you will affect the birth rate to a certain degree. But that represents a certain morality, which is in conflict with a very strong and tacit understanding among establishments and the rate at which they'll change in an easy way, a peaceful way. I don't even know what I'm saying at this point.
Saying it well.
Yeah.
You're not too into that now, are you? I mean, you're not too concerned with social trips and political trips, and or I don't get that feeling from you. Am I reading you wrong?
Well, I'm always concerned with them. I mean, I don't rap them out like I used to. I feel like I've gone as far as I possibly could, just as an amateur in terms of it. I think about it, but I feel very on pace in terms of sociology and politics within myself right now. I'm alert to what's going down as much as I can be, and in the way which I am. Which, for instance, I'm not as alert through the media at this time as I have been. I don't always read all my magazines every week, and or any of them sometimes, but I watch how the people all around are feeling about what's happening, and so in that way I'm still concerned. A large part of my mental life is involved in it, but most of my outgoing energy right now is involved in my own work, which has been extensive for the last little period of my life.
A bunch of people who want to talk to you. Let's take a few calls, okay?
Great.
Move.
How am I?
You're cool. Just move the mic closer to the talkback box, because you have to talk into that box. Okay? And they'll forgive all the noises. KBBC, hello.
Hi.
Hello.
I'd like to ask Jack if there was any significant reasons for the name of Five Easy Pieces for the first picture you did.
The reason for the title is it's the name of like a child's piano primer. It's one of the early books that you learn how to play the piano from as a child. It's a classic book like Dick and Jane is to reading.
Okay, fine. Thank you very much.
Sure.
KPBC, hello.
Yes, hello. Are we on the air?
Yes.
A friend of mine has an interpretation, this is for Jack again, of the end of Five Easy Pieces, where she claims that his hopping on the log truck and then pulling out of the gas station is, in fact, telling the audience that he's going back home, back up to Washington, and joining his family. Now, I know Jack earlier said that the movie was an anti-family movie, but if he could maybe look at the whole movie objectively, see if he could make any sense of that interpretation of the ending.
It's not a response that she was the only one who received. So, in some way, it's valid about that is a response that's created by this movie. It was not our intention. He's heading north and out of his dilemma by flight.
Right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you for the call.
Right. Bye-bye.
Just one other thing that in any conversation that I would have with yourself, and when Dennis Hopper was here, we were talking about this also. Peter Fonda was on. I've got all the three names in.
Okay.
Peter Fonda was on the,
Oh, yeah.
the Johnny Carson show 2 or 3 nights ago.
Oh, he was.
Yeah.
Was he?
He broke his leg. Do you know that? He came out with
I
a,
saw him with a cast
Yeah.
a week ago. Yep.
and he was discussing Easy Rider briefly and talking about how he did. He did not deal with was it Billy the Kid and Captain America
Yes.
as heroes. He said that most of the people who went to see the film, most of the young people who went to see the film, related to them in almost hero-like terms. But as far as he was concerned, they weren't heroes at all.
No, they both took the point of view that they were representing certain types from the criminal element of the country in a nation of criminals. They both felt that they were playing anti-heroic characters. Not to try and explore anyone's psyche, but just in classic terms, that's what they felt they were doing. That's what they decided. That was their design.
How did you respond to your character in the film?
Oh, I liked my character the minute that I read it. Right away, I saw, oh yes, this will be something fun to do, and that everyone will like it.
Was he heroic? I mean, the young man whose dad was an attorney who leaves home in Texas.
No, he wasn't heroic. I just I liked it. I liked it because one of the things I worried about in Easy Rider was I felt that it might be interpreted as an anti-regional film, i.e. an anti-Southern film. And I liked getting a chance to play a Southerner in the film who people would like, not feel it, and who had an intellect and was an interesting person to know and that you would enjoy to know, because I've always had very nice feelings about the South myself. I'm from New Jersey. I'm not from the South, but something about it I like very much. And I like getting to play a positive Southern character in the film. He was very straightforward. I felt like he was a character sort of out of control internally, but had a very good view of the outside, and also could communicate some of it. He's a little wacky at times, but again, a lot in the character I could very easily get behind myself.
That scene where you were all together when Peter and Dennis were turning you on for the first time, which has got to be one of the more delightful scenes in motion pictures in the past 5 or 6 years. Were you all stoned during that sequence?
Through most of it, yeah. In fact, the actual acting problem there, since the person gets progressively stoned during the scene, is to not be stoned during the section of the scene that you take after the first take, in which you are not stoned, but you are.
What is that? I mean, that must be an uncanny experience, being high and being filmed and being aware that the film will be seen by, millions of people. Is that an intimate moment being revealed, or is that something that makes the gig easier?
Oh, no, I don't think so. I mean, I didn't feel that way about it. I would if it was at Paramount, and I felt completely out of touch with whatever was controlling the experience. But out in the middle of a field with Hopper and Fonda and Leslie Kovacs, I didn't feel like it was...
Couldn't be uptight.
No, it was nice. I mean, it was a scene about it, and puts you in the most direct contact with the point of view that's being expressed.
Let's take a break, and we'll be right back with Jack Nicholson.